In the fog-choked town of Haven's Edge, Detective Ryan Caldwell thought he'd seen it all, until Victor Grayson's blood stained the marble floors of his seaside mansion. The only witness? Emily Harper, a bartender with eyes that hold more secrets than the night she saw a killer flee. She's terrified, evasive, and slipping through Ryan's grasp, her every word pulling him deeper into a case that's starting to feel personal. A silver lighter, a slashed tire, a whispered threat. Clues pile up like driftwood, but the truth stays just out of reach. As Ryan's late-night visits blur the line between protector and predator, he wonders, is Emily the key to justice, or the spark that'll burn his world down? One thing's clear, someone's watching, and the next move could be deadly. Before we continue, friends, I kindly ask you to subscribe to my channel. It only takes a second for you, but for me, it's an extra motivation to keep creating videos. I'd also really appreciate a comment. Thank you for your support, and now let's continue with the story. The wind tore across the cliffs of Haven's Edge, a mournful wail that rattled the bones of the town. Late October had draped the coast in a shroud of gray, sky and sea blurring into one endless smear, the kind of damp chill that seeped into your marrow and stayed there. The streets twisted tight, flanked by salt-worn shingle houses and streetlights that flickered like dying stars, their faint buzz swallowed by the storm. At the town's ragged edge, Grayson's seaside and hunched against the night, its brick facade scarred by years of brine, the neon open signs stuttering like a heartbeat about to give out. Inside, the air hung heavy with the ghosts of spilled beer and fried clams, the low hum of locals weaving through the clatter of glass. Emily Harper stood behind the bar, pouring bourbon with hands that didn't falter, her green eyes glinting sharp and restless in the muted light. 30 years old, but her face carried shadows deeper than her age. Fine lines carved by a past she kept locked tight, a guarded edge that made even the rowdiest fishermen lower their voices around her. Across town, in a cluttered office perched above the police station, Detective Ryan Caldwell slouched in his chair, the springs groaning under him like an old friend's complaint. 42, with a frame still solid despite the years. His dark hair was threaded with gray, his jaw set hard beneath a day's stubble. His desk was a battlefield, files stained with coffee rings, cigarette stubs crushed into an ashtray, a whiskey bottle stashed in the drawer he pretended was a secret. The walls were stark, save for a single photo tacked near the window. Sarah, his sister, 16 forever, her grin wide and unguarded. A Polaroid snapped the summer before she vanished. He could still hear her laugh, high and wild, chasing him through the dunes with a fistful of seaweed, her voice promising she'd catch him next time. She never did. That unsolved case, her body never found, her killer never named, had hollowed him out, left a wound that whiskey only dulled. Ryan scrubbed a hand over his face, the roughness grounding him, and stared out at the rain-lashed street. He'd come to Haven's Edge to outrun that echo, but it clung to him like damp salt air. The radio crackled just past midnight, slicing through the quiet. Dispatch's voice was clipped. Victor Grayson, the town's golden boy, dead in his mansion on Cliffside Drive. Stabbed, a bloody mess. Ryan snatched his leather coat, worn thin, reeking of smoke, and plunged into the storm. The road snaked along the cliffs, treacherous with rain, the ocean below roaring like it wanted to swallow him whole. Grayson's mansion rose ahead, a hulking silhouette of old wealth, its peaked roofs and tall windows glowing amber against the black. The front door gaped open, swaying on its hinges, and Ryan stepped inside, boots grinding against shards of a crystal vase that had shattered across the foyer. The air hit him hard, thick with blood's copper bite, undercut by the faint sweetness of spilled scotch. Victor lay sprawled on a Persian rug, 58, his silver hair matted red, a chef's knife plunged deep into his chest. His lifeless eyes gaped up at a chandelier dripping with prisms, its light fractured across walls lined with gilt-framed portraits, stern ancestors glaring down on the ruin below. A velvet chaise lay tipped over, its gold tassels tangled in a smear of crimson, and a bookshelf had spilled its leather-bound volumes, pages fluttering like wounded birds. Ryan knelt beside the body, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. The room was a shrine to excess. A marble fireplace carved with cherubs, cold despite the night's bite. A rosewood liquor cabinet, its glass doors cracked. A brass telescope pointed uselessly at the storm outside. But the chaos told a story. Chairs toppled. A decanter smashed. A handprint streaked in blood across a silk curtain. His radio buzzed again. A witness, waiting at the inn. Ryan's pulse kicked up, a familiar ache stirring. Sarah's face flashing in his mind, her voice whispering, "Find them, Ree." He drove back through the deluge, wipers slashing a frantic beat, not knowing this witness would drag him deeper than he'd ever gone. Emily was polishing the bar when he arrived, the bell jangling like a gunshot in the stillness. The last drunks had staggered out, leaving the inn silent but for the jukebox's mournful loop. Springsteen crooning about lost highways. She didn't look up, her cloth moving in slow, deliberate arcs, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped it, a quiet rebellion against the intrusion. Ryan shook rain from his coat and crossed the floor, his shadow pooling dark on the warped boards. "Emily Harper?" His voice was low, steady, a tone that demanded answers without begging. She nodded, a flicker of motion, her fingers clenching the rag tighter. Up close, she was magnetic. Not just those eyes, but the way she stood, poised yet brittle, like a wave about to break. "Heard you saw something tonight," he said, resting an elbow on the bar. "Up at Grayson's." Her gaze darted to his, then slid away, fixing on the amber bottles behind her. "I was walking home," she said, voice soft but taut, a thread of fear woven through it. "Saw a guy run out the back, into the trees. Tall, hooded jacket. That's all." Ryan tilted his head, watching her. The words were flat, rehearsed, and it lit a spark in his gut. Sarah had lied once too, about where she'd been that night, and he'd let it slide. Not this time. "That's all," he pressed, his tone sharpening. She shrugged, a quick jerk, and turned to stack glasses, her back a wall between them. He caught the tremble in her hands, the way she fumbled a tumbler and caught it just before it fell. A small fight to keep control. "No screams? No face?" he asked, stepping closer. She shook her head, too fast. "Dark. Foggy. I didn't linger." Ryan pulled out his notepad, jotting her words, but his eyes stayed on her. She was holding something back, and it clawed at him, that old need to protect, to solve, surging up like bile. "Victor Grayson's dead, Emily." Knife in his chest. "You're the only one who saw anything, and I need more than a ghost in a hood." She stilled, her breath catching, then faced him, her expression a mask. "I told you what I saw. I'm not your bloodhound." Her voice cut now, defiance flaring, but she reached for a glass of water, sipping it slow, her lips pressing tight as if to swallow something else down. Ryan's mouth twitched, a cold half-smile. "No, but you're my witness, and witnesses don't get to clam up." The silence crackled, the jukebox dying mid-note. Emily crossed her arms, nails biting into her skin, leaving faint crescents. "I've got nothing more," she said, but her eyes flicked to the window, to the rain-streaked panes where the dark loomed. Ryan tracked her glance, spotting a shadow shift outside, real or imagined. He couldn't tell. He stepped back, pocketing the notepad. "Fine, but I'll be back. This doesn't end here." He turned, the bell clanging, but her voice halted him. "Detective." He looked back. She hesitated, then murmured, "Watch yourself up there. That house. It swallows people." Her fingers brushed a thin scar on her wrist, a nervous tick, before she dropped her hand. He didn't answer, just strode into the rain, her warning ringing in his ears. In his truck, he lit a cigarette, the flare painting his face in harsh lines as he replayed her words. She was terrified, not just of the killer, but of him, of something she couldn't outrun. It hit too close, Sarah's wide eyes begging him to stay home that night, and he'd laughed it off. He exhaled smoke, watching it curl against the windshield. The radio hissed, a voice breaking through. "Harper's place? Someone's there?" His heart lurched, the cigarette tumbling as he floored it, tires screaming on wet pavement. Emily's fear wasn't abstract anymore. It was alive, and it was calling him back. The cliffs reared up, the mansion's lights piercing the fog like a hunter's stare. Ryan gripped the wheel, his mind a storm of its own. A dead man, a witness teetering on the edge, and now this trouble crashing in fast. Haven's Edge was splitting open, and he was diving headfirst into the fracture, chasing a woman who might be his mirror or his ruin. The sea thrashed below, the wind howled, and out there, something watched, patient, poised, ready to strike. Rain lashed Ryan's truck as he roared through Haven's Edge, the cliffs a smeared shadow in his peripheral vision. The radio's broken cry, "Someone's there," gnawed at him, a relentless itch he couldn't scratch. Emily Street loomed ahead, a crooked ribbon of weathered houses, their blinds drawn tight against the night save for the occasional flicker of a nosy silhouette. He slammed to a stop outside her rental, a narrow two-story relic with chipped paint and a porch light thrashing in the gale. The front door hung ajar, a thin stripe of gold spilling out, and his chest tightened like a fist. He cut the engine, snatched his flashlight, and stepped into the downpour, the cold biting through his coat in an instant. His boots churned the mud as he closed in, the beam darting across the stoop, snagging on a raw gash in the doorframe. Too precise, too angry to be chance. Inside, the stillness pressed against his ears, thick with the musk of wet timber and a faint, acrid edge, panic's aftertaste. The living room was a patchwork of cast-offs. A lumpy sofa, a table strewn with creased receipts, a lamp sputtering like a candle in the wind. "Emily?" Ryan's voice punched through the hush, gritty and sharp. Silence answered. He moved quick, boards groaning under him, the light probing shadows. A chair lay sprawled near the kitchen arch, its backrest splintered like it had taken a hit. Gun drawn, the weight grounding him, he eased through the doorway. The kitchen was chaos, drawers gaping, a mug smashed across the floor, coffee pooling like spilled ink. Then he saw her, folded against the back door, knees tucked tight, a butcher knife gripped in her hand, her knuckles pale as bone. "Emily, it's Ryan." He lowered the weapon slow, palm raised, open. Her head jerked up, green eyes flashing with a hunted gleam, her breath hitching in shallow gasps. The knife tilted, its edge glinting, but she held it firm, a lifeline she wouldn't release. "He was here," she croaked. Her voice scraped raw, lips barely parting. At the window first, then the door, scratching, pushing. Ryan knelt, close enough to catch the faint lavender on her, a fragile thread beneath the sweat and strain. "Who?" he urged, steady but gentle, drawing her out. She shook her head, a quick, brittle twist, her free hand clawing at her sleeve. "Didn't see." Hooded like before. I shouted, he bolted. Her gaze flicked to the back door, its lock dangling useless, screws scattered like fallen teeth. Ryan rose, his jaw clenching as he surveyed the room. The sink window stood unbroken, but the curtains sagged, a rip snagged high where something had caught, someone's haste. He nudged the door open with his boot, peering into the yard, a snarl of weeds and dark, the rain pounding it flat. The flashlight snared a footprint, deep and sloppy, trailing toward the trees. "Stay put," he said, stepping out, but Emily lurched to her feet, knife still in hand, her bare toes curling against the cold. "Not alone," she snapped, her voice fraying but defiant, a spark flaring through the haze. He nodded, sharp, and she shadowed him, silent as a wraith on the sodden grass. The trail dissolved fast, eaten by the brush, but Ryan's instincts roared. This wasn't a coincidence. Back inside, he jammed the door shut, wedging a chair under the knob. Emily slumped onto the sofa, the knife thudding to the table, her hands raking through her hair, tugging strands loose in a restless dance. "This isn't my fight," she muttered, her voice a low burn, eyes fixed on nothing. Ryan sat opposite, his coat dripping a slow puddle, her words sinking into him like stones. "You saw more that night," he said, leaning in, elbows braced on his knees. Her gaze snapped to his, then slid away, guarded as ever. I told you. Enough, Emily. His tone cut, frustration seeping through. Someone's hunting you now. I can't stop it blind. She flinched, her fingers brushing that scar on her wrist, then stilled, a wall slamming down. Slowly, like it cost her, she fished a silver lighter from her pocket, polished, etched with a flowing edge, and pushed it across the table, the scrape harsh in the quiet. He dropped it that night. I took it. Her voice dipped, a faint hitch on Ethan's initials, her eyes darting to a faded photo on the wall. A younger her, laughing with a man whose face was scratched out. Ryan's breath snagged, his hand closing over the lighter. Ethan Grayson, Victor's outcast son, a fuse waiting to blow. He'd seen those initials in faded arrest reports. A kid who'd torched his own bridges. Ethan, he murmured, flipping the lighter, its heft whispering privilege or resentment. Emily's nod was slight, her lips a thin line, and for a heartbeat, her expression flickered. Something old, something buried. I didn't want this mess, she said, waving at the wreckage, the knife, the night. Ryan leaned back, the puzzle shifting too quick. Why shield him? What's the tie? Her laugh cracked, bitter and thin, a sound that bled more than it healed. No tie. Just know how this town chews up anyone who talks. She stood, pacing to the window, her reflection sharp against the glass, fingers tracing the frame like she could claw her way out. Ryan watched, the lighter chilling his palm, Sarah's plea echoing. Don't lose her, Ree. You're not slipping free now, he said, rising. They're not done with you or me. A knock jolted the door, hard and abrupt, and Emily whirled, her hand clamping over her mouth, eyes wide as moons. Ryan's gun snapped up, pulse racing as he waved her back. Who's there? He growled, edging close. Jimmy Tate, came the muffled reply, shaky but known. His rookie partner, all nerves and lanky limbs. Ryan cracked the door, rain gusting in, Jimmy's poncho dripping, flashlight trembling in his grip. You solo? Ryan scanned the dark beyond. Jimmy nodded, teeth chattering. Yeah, boss. Heard the call. Thought you'd need me. Ryan let him in, bolting the door, and glanced at Emily. She'd sunk back to the couch, arms locked tight, the lighter vanished. Tucked away, a secret she couldn't shed. Break in, Ryan said, keeping it tight, mind still on that footprint, those initials. Jimmy whistled, peering around. Same guy from Grayson's? Ryan didn't bite, just handed him the flashlight. Yard. Look for anything. Tracks, scraps, whatever. Jimmy wavered, then ducked out, swallowed by the storm. Alone, Ryan faced Emily, the air humming with stakes. No more games, he said, low and firm. Ethan's linked to Victor. But why you? She met his eyes, a fire smoldering there. Anger, defiance. I don't know, she shot back. But I'm not your project to fix. I've outrun worse. Her words stung. Sarah's stubborn spark flashing in his mind. That last fight before she walked out forever. Jimmy burst back, drenched and wild-eyed, thrusting a soggy scrap at Ryan. By the fence, he gasped. The ink bled, but the message stabbed clear. Keep quiet, or you're next. Ryan's gut iced over, the note crumpling in his fist. Sarah's voice hit him hard. They warned me too, Ree, and you didn't listen. Her note, crumpled in his pocket all those years ago, had said less but meant the same. He wouldn't fail again. He looked at Emily, her face ashen but her chin lifted. A fighter braced for the blow. The storm howled, the dark tightening its grip, and out there, a shadow loomed, its next strike a blade poised to fall. The drizzle clung to Haven's edge like a damp shroud as dawn broke, the sky a slab of mottled iron. Ryan stood outside the station, a cigarette flaring briefly between his lips before he crushed it under his heel, the ember sizzling out in a puddle. His mind churned, sharp and relentless, the crumpled note from Emily's place. Keep quiet, or you're next. Fueling a fire that wouldn't let him rest. Ethan's lighter weighed down his pocket, a cold anchor pulling him toward answers. He stormed inside, the station's fluorescent hum a jagged edge against his focus, and made straight for the records room, a dim warren of rusting cabinets and mildewed files. He ripped open a drawer, fingers clawing through folders until he hit gold. Ethan Grayson's rap sheet. Bar fights, a boosted car, a restraining order from a woman who'd fled to Portland. Victor's name was scrawled across bail receipts until 2 years back, when a clipped memo from his lawyer shut it down. Ethan disinherited. No further contact. Revenge stared back at him, stark and ugly. Jimmy barreled in, tie flapping, shoving a blurry photo under Ryan's nose. Gas station cam, night of the murder, he panted. Ethan fueling up, 10 miles out. Clerk backs it. Ryan snatched the still. Hooded figure, Chevy's dented fender, timestamp glaring midnight. His gut lurched. Ethan was clear, but the lighter screamed setup. Emily was the key and he needed her now. He grabbed his keys, the station blurring as he gunned it to the inn, tires spitting gravel. The lunch crowd was sparse, fishermen hunched over beers, the jukebox moaning a slow dirge. Emily worked the bar, her hands swift, polishing glasses, stacking coasters, her eyes bruised with sleeplessness but alive, darting like a cornered animal's. He slid onto a stool, voice low and taut. Ethan's alibi checks out. Gas station. That lighter, whose is it? She froze, glass mid-wipe, then slammed it down, the clink sharp. I saw it drop, she said, clipped, her lips a tight seam. He slid the lighter across the counter, e.g. dull under the bar lights. He wasn't there, Emily. Who was? Her gaze flicked to it, then him, a flicker of defiance cutting through. Could have been Victor's. He flashed it around, bragged about it being his dad's. She turned, pouring a shot she didn't touch, her knuckles whitening on the bottle. The door crashed open, Ethan charging in lean, wired, eyes blazing under a dripping jacket. The room stilled, but he zeroed on Emily, boots pounding. You're pinning this on me, huh? He snarled, lunging for her arm. Ryan surged up, slamming him back against a table, wood groaning under the impact. Hands off, he hissed, pinning Ethan, his pulse hammering with a need to shield her. Her voice, her fire, snagging on something deep he couldn't name. Ethan writhed, spitting. She's full of it, cop. I wasn't there. Ryan released him, chest tight, watching Ethan storm out, the door banging shut. He wheeled on Emily, her arms crossed, her gaze skittering to that scratched-out photo. What did he mean? He snapped. He's unhinged, she said, flat, but her fingers twitched, a tell. The bar phone shrilled, a regular grunting, detective, and tossing it over. Jimmy's voice crackled through. Slash tires, Emily's car just happened. Another note in her mailbox. You can't hide. Ryan's grip crushed the receiver. Unit there, now, he barked, hanging, eyes locking on her. You're not safe. She grabbed her coat, no fight left, her hands knotting as she followed him out. The car sat gutted in the lot, tires flayed open, rubber splayed like torn flesh. Ryan scanned the street, a prickle crawling up his spine, eyes out there, waiting. At the station, he shoved her into an interview room. Gray walls, scratched table, mirror throwing back her hollow stare. Jimmy burst in, baggie in hand, voice high. Cams cut, wires sliced. Here's the note. Ryan snatched it, you can't hide, and slammed it down, pacing, his mind a live wire. Ethan's out, but someone's framing this. Why you? Emily traced the table's edge, then looked up, voice low, steady. Victor wasn't clean. I poured drinks at his parties, saw him smash a guy's face into a table over a bad deal, threaten a supplier with a broken bottle. He owed people, crossed people. Big egos, bigger grudges. Her eyes flicked to the mirror, sharp, knowing, and Ryan's pulse quickened. She wasn't just a witness. She was a window he couldn't look away from, her every word pulling him closer. Captain Reese stormed in, broad and furious, barking, Caldwell, my office. Ryan shot Emily a glance, stay, and followed, Reese's voice a growl. You're glued to her, not the case. Back off or you're done. Ryan's fists balled, his resolve steeling. Emily's defiance, her scars, echoing Sarah's, and he wouldn't lose her too. He needed her safe, needed her voice in his ear. A tether he couldn't cut. Back in the room, she was gone. A scrap on the table in her jagged scrawl. Meet me tonight. Here. His hand brushed it, her phantom touch sparking under his skin. Obsession tightening its grip. Trust or snare? The line was blurring, and the next move loomed dark and lethal. The pier jutted into the twilight like a broken spine, its warped planks slick with the tide's kiss. Ryan's truck growled to a stop at the fringe of Haven's Edge, gravel crunching under the tires as the engine coughed silent. He stepped out, the air biting with salt and the sour tang of decaying kelp. Emily's note. Meet me tonight. Pier. Clutched tight in his hand, her scrawl a quiet command he couldn't shake. The sky burned with streaks of amber and violet, the last gasps of daylight shimmering on the restless waves. But his focus narrowed to the pier's end, where she might be waiting. The lighter rested cold in his pocket. A talisman now, her shadow threading through his resolve like a stitch he couldn't pull loose. He ditched the station against Reese's barked warning, the captain's voice a distant growl beneath the hum of her pull. Her secrets a current he was caught in. Wind lashed at his coat as he strode the pier's length, boots thudding on the uneven boards, the spray stinging his face. Gulls wheeled overhead, their shrieks clawing through the drone of far-off boats. His watch read 7:05 p.m., and he swept the shadows beneath the rusted railings, tension coiling tight. Then she emerged, a dark figure at the pier's tip, coat flapping wild, hair whipping in the gusts. She didn't turn as he closed in, her stance rigid, hands buried in her pockets, gazing out at the sea's churn. "You're late," she said, her voice slicing the wind, steady but edged, her shoulders hunched against an unseen weight. "Had to shake a shadow?" Ryan answered, halting a few paces back, studying her silhouette, sharp lines softened by the fading light, her stillness a puzzle he ached to unravel. "Why here?" She pivoted slow, and the dusk caught a bruise blooming under her cheek, raw and purple. His gut twisted, a protective surge flaring before he reined it in, his hand flexing at his side. "Who did that?" he demanded, his tone gravel rough. She brushed the mark, a faint hiss escaping her lips, then let her hand fall. "Caught someone off guard after I left. They didn't like me asking around." He stepped nearer, the space between them thinning, his breath catching on the need to know more. "Who?" She shook her head, sharp and quick, and fished a creased photo from her coat. Her younger self, arm looped around Victor, both grinning against a yacht's gleaming hull. "This was in my locker at the inn," she said, shoving it into his hand. "Someone's dragging up the past." Ryan took it, the paper crinkling under his grip, Victor's smug face a splinter under his skin. "You too," he said, voice low, the dots connecting. "More than bar gigs." Her laugh cut through, brittle and quick. "Yeah, more. 3 years ago we had a fling, hidden, ugly. He cut it off when I pressed about his deals. Swore he'd bury me if I spoke." She crossed her arms, the wind snatching her words, but her eyes blazed, unyielding. Ryan's mind spun. Victor's threats, the smashed face, the bottle, now this, a history painting her as prey. "Why tell me now?" he asked, tucking the photo away, his fingers lingering on its edge as if it held her essence. "It's not Ethan," she said, stepping into his space, her breath misting in the cold. "Someone else knows. Someone tying me to this." A gunshot cracked the air, sharp and close, the sound ricocheting off the cliffs. Ryan hauled her down, both crashing to the planks, his arm bracing her as would chips sprayed. His gun snapped free, eyes scouring the shore where a shadow slipped into the dunes, gone in a blink. "Stay down," he growled, his weight shielding her, her nearness a steady hum beneath the adrenaline. She nodded, her breath uneven, and they edged to the railing, peering through the slats. The beach lay bare, the shooter vanished, but the air thrummed with menace. "They mean business," she muttered, her voice taut, her hand grazing his as she steadied herself. A fleeting jolt he felt in his core. "So do I," he said, pulling her up, his grip firm. "You're not staying exposed." They bolted to his truck, the pier creaking in their wake, and he drove hard, weaving through backstreets, eyes flicking to the mirror for pursuers. She sat silent, clutching the photo, her knuckles pale. At a stop sign, he broke the hush. "Victor's deals? Specifics?" She stared ahead, then spoke, low and clipped. "Dirty loans, rigged bets." Saw him pass a duffel stuffed with cash to a guy in a slick suit, then threatened to drown him if he didn't double it. Another night, a fisherman burst in, yelling about a boat Victor burned for insurance, called him a leech. Ryan's hands tightened on the wheel, Victor's world sprawling into a maze of blood and greed. He veered into a motel lot on the town's outskirts, the sign flickering vacancy in neon green, its buzz a low drone against the night. "You're here tonight," he said, killing the engine. She followed without a word. The clerk, a gaunt man with nicotine-stained fingers, handing over a key for cash, barely glancing up. The room was a time capsule. Mustard yellow wallpaper peeling at the seams, a bed with a threadbare quilt sagging in the middle, a faint whiff of mildew and cheap pine cleaner hanging in the air. A radiator clanked in the corner, spitting heat, and the window rattled with each gust, framing the lot's sodium glow. Emily dropped onto the bed, the photo slipping to the floor, and Ryan retrieved it, his gaze tracing her younger smile. A quiet ache settling in as he set it on the table. "I'll take the door," he said, dragging a chair over, its legs scraping the linoleum. She shook her head. "Quick. Wait." She pulled a crumpled envelope from her coat, unmarked, and tipped out a rusted fishhook, its tip stained dark. "This was with the photo," she said, voice hushed, eyes locked on it. "Victor fished, loved boasting about it. This isn't random." Ryan took it, the metal biting cold, his mind flashing to that fisherman's rage, the torched boat, a thread begging to be pulled. "A marker," he muttered, turning it in his fingers. "Or a promise." A thud jolted the window, sudden and hard, and Ryan lunged, gun drawn, shoving Emily back. The glass held, a rock tumbling outside, a shadow flitting past the lot's edge. He charged out, boots pounding pavement, but the figure melted into the trees, leaving only the crunch of leaves. Back inside, Emily stood by the bed, arms crossed, her face drawn but resolute. "They're relentless," she said, her tone a steel thread, and he nodded, bolting the door, his focus sharpening. Her fight mirroring his own, a rhythm he couldn't step away from. His radio hissed, Jimmy's voice breaking through. "Boss, units at the inn, nothing yet. Reese is pissed, says you're off the rails." Ryan's jaw set, his hand resting on the table near her photo, the fishhook glinting beside it. "Tell him I'm chasing leads," he snapped, cutting the line, his eyes meeting hers. She didn't flinch, just watched him, a question in her stare. Trust or folly? The night pressed in, the hook a silent taunt, and the next blow loomed, unseen but close, waiting to strike. The motel room's radiator clattered like a trapped animal, its uneven gasps filling the stillness with a restless edge. Ryan sat by the door, gun balanced on his knee, the fishhook glinting on the table beside Emily's photo, a grim relic tying the night together. She paced the tight space, her boots scraping the faded linoleum, the bruise on her cheek a stark shadow under the bulb's weak flicker. The air was thick with the sour bite of mildew and unspoken stakes, the wind clawing at the window like it wanted in. He watched her, her agitation stirring something raw in him. Not just duty, but a quiet ache, her fight echoing Sarah's in ways that cut too deep. The radio sat mute, Jimmy's last check-in a distant hum, but the silence pressed heavy, a prelude to chaos. She halted mid-step, turning to him, arms locked across her chest. "You're staring again," she said, her voice low, a thread of defiance woven through exhaustion. He leaned forward, elbows digging into his knees, the gun a steady weight. "You're carrying more than you're saying," he replied, his tone measured but piercing, eyes flicking to the fishhook's rust. She let out a sharp breath, half laugh, half relief, and sank onto the bed, the springs groaning as she dropped her head into her hands. "You want it all?" she asked, lifting her gaze, her eyes fierce yet fragile. "Victor didn't just end us. He held my past over me like a blade. I ran from hell to get here." Ryan's chest tightened, his fingers grazing the lighter in his pocket, grounding him against the flood of her words. "What hell?" he pressed, his voice softening, the room shrinking around them. She traced the scar on her wrist, slow and deliberate, her breath hitching. "Seattle. An ex, possessive, brutal. I bolted with nothing, became Emily Harper." Victor sniffed it out, used it to keep me quiet. Her confession hung there, raw and jagged, and Ryan felt it. Her escape a mirror to Sarah's desperate pleas he'd ignored, a wound he'd never closed. He stood, pacing to the window, the glass cold against his palm. "He owned you," he muttered, more to himself, the weight of her trust settling heavy. A sharp knock cracked the quiet, 3 precise raps that snapped them both alert. Ryan's gun rose, his free hand waving her back. "Who's there?" he growled, peering through the peephole. "Margaret Grayson," came the reply, cool and clipped. His pulse spiked. Victor's widow, uninvited, unannounced. He eased the door open, gun low, and she stepped in, tall and severe, her silver blonde hair pulled taut, her black coat shedding rain like ink. Her pale eyes darted to Emily, narrowing to slits. "You?" she hissed, venom dripping from the word. Ryan shut the door hard, the thud echoing as Margaret shrugged off her coat, tossing it over the chair with a flick of her wrist. Her suit was crisp, tailored, a stark contrast to the room's decay. "Words out, you're digging into Victor's death," she said, her gaze pinning Ryan, cold and calculating. With her, Emily stood, shoulders squared, her voice steady despite the strain. "I didn't choose this. Someone's targeting me. Maybe you've got to guess why." Margaret's smile was thin, a blade's edge. "You were his plaything. Don't act surprised it's biting you now." Ryan stepped between them, his patience thinning, the air crackling. "Why are you here?" Margaret's smirk faltered, and she pulled a velvet pouch from her purse, tipping it onto the table. A gold coin rolled out, Roman, worn, its edges dulled by time. "Victor's, from his collection. Found it in my garden this morning, half buried." Ryan grabbed it, the metal cool against his skin, his mind lurching, the fishhook. Now this, both tied to Victor's world. "Who left it?" he demanded, turning it over, the hook stain a dark twin on the table. Margaret's shrug was practiced, aloof. "Someone pointing fingers. I'd wager. I don't like being dragged in." Her eyes slid to Emily, sharp with disdain. "He strayed her others. I lived with it." Emily's jaw tightened, but she held her ground, her silence heavy with something Ryan couldn't place. Recognition? Maybe, or memory. He pocketed the coin, his voice low. "If it's not you, why wait to show this?" Margaret's gaze flickered, a crack in her armor. "I don't trust cops or her. Fix this or I'll handle it my way." She swept out, the door banging shut, leaving a chill that lingered. Ryan turned to Emily, the coin a hard lump against his chest. "She's hiding something," he said, his gut twisting. Margaret's visit, the coin, too neat, too timed. Emily nodded, her fingers curling into her palms. She loathed him, more than she'll admit. The radiator clanked, the night stretching taut, until a scream ripped through the wall, shrill, guttural, from next door. Ryan lunged out, Emily trailing close, the hallway dim and sour with old cigarette smoke. He kicked in the neighboring door, gun up, and stopped cold. Tom Riley, the fisherman, sprawled on the carpet, his gut slashed open, blood pooling dark under a chipped nightstand. The silver lighter gleamed in his rigid hand, a fishing line strung tight from his chest to the wall, knotted around a rusted hook, twin to the one in their room. Emily stifled a cry, her hand clamping over her mouth, but her eyes widened, a flash of knowing cutting through the shock. Ryan yanked her back, his voice a harsh whisper. You recognize him? She nodded, her breath shallow, ragged. Tom worked Victor's boats. Cursed him out at the inn once. Said he'd been robbed blind. Ryan's mind raced. The lighter, the hook, Riley's fury over that torched boat. All circling back to Victor's greed. He barked at the maid sobbing in the corner, "Call it in," and hauled Emily back to their room, slamming the door, his pulse pounding in his ears. "We're targets now," he said, holstering his gun. The coin and hook clattering onto the table beside her photo. Riley's death, that coin. Someone's weaving us in. She sank onto the bed, her hands trembling as she raked them through her hair, then looked up, her voice fierce despite the shake. "Margaret brought that coin right before this. She's not clean." Ryan's breath caught, the timing a neon sign. Margaret's visit a spark, Riley's murder the flame. He grabbed his keys, his resolve hardening, her fight fueling his own. "Then we move on her." A crash erupted outside, glass splintering, metal groaning. Ryan flung the door open, the lot a mess of smoke and chaos. His truck, smashed hard, its hood buckled by a dark sedan screeching away. Emily stumbled out behind him, her face ashen, the maid's wails ringing down the hall. Ryan's radio flared, Jimmy's voice cutting through, frantic. "Boss, units at Riley's scene, prints everywhere. Reese wants you in." Ryan's grip tightened on the keys, the coin a cold burn in his pocket. Emily's gaze locking with his. Fear there? Yes, but a fire too, a shared edge. The truck's ruin tied Margaret's coin to Riley's blood, a thread pulling tight, and the next move hung sharp and unanswered. Who was bleeding next? A cold, gray dawn clawed over Haven's edge, the sea churning beneath a sky that refused to yield. Ryan stood beside his wrecked truck in the motel lot, its hood crumpled, glass shattered, a mute witness to the night's fury. The coin and fishhook weighed heavy in his coat. Emily's photo pressed against his chest like a heartbeat he couldn't silence. She stepped out, coat cinched tight, the bruise on her cheek a dark smear against her pallor. Her eyes met his, fierce and steady, binding them in the chaos. Riley's blood, Margaret's coin, the sedan's screeching escape all tightening a noose around them. The air reeked of salt and gasoline, the motel's neon sign flickering its last. "We're out of time," she said, lighting a cigarette with a flick, the flame sharp in the gloom. Ryan nodded, jaw clenched, her presence a tether he clung to. "Margaret's next." His radio crackled, Jimmy's voice cutting through. "Boss, her place is sealed. Cops up front. No sign of her." Ryan gripped the coin, its edge biting. "We're going. Get there." They bolted through backstreets, the town stirring. Nets dragging, diner lights blinking awake. Margaret's mansion rose ahead, its dark windows staring down. A single glow pulsing upstairs. Police tape flapped loose, a cruiser idling, Jimmy still absent. Ryan slipped past, Emily tight behind, the front door creaking open under his nudge, gun drawn. The foyer loomed silent, marble dulled, chandelier swaying, dust thick with a copper tang. The staircase spiraled up, each step a thud, her breath close as they hit the landing. A hallway stretched, one door ajar, light spilling thin and shaky. He shoved it wide. Margaret sprawled on a four-poster, silver hair fanned, pistol limp in her hand, blood soaking the silk. A note lay on her chest. "I killed him." She knew too much. Ryan froze, the coin searing his pocket, the confession a gut punch. Emily snatched the note, her hands shaking. "This isn't hers. The writing's wrong," she hissed, eyes darting over it. He grabbed it. Too crisp, the slant off, a fake. A floorboard groaned behind them, and he spun, gun up, as Jimmy lunged from the dark. Knife flashing, face twisted. Emily stumbled back with a yelp, and Ryan fired, the shot booming, clipping Jimmy's shoulder. He crashed down, blade skittering, blood blooming fast. "You couldn't stop," Jimmy rasped, clutching the wound, his glare wild. Ryan kicked the knife aside, pinning him, voice low and lethal. "You did this, Riley, the truck?" Jimmy sneered, spitting blood, his good hand clawing at the floor. Her idea, plant the lighter, clean it up. Riley wouldn't shut up. He jerked his head toward Margaret's body, his laugh a wet choke. She panicked, wanted out. Ryan's grip tightened, the coin's truth burning. Margaret's puppet, Riley's end, the truck a desperate swing. And Emily? He snarled. Jimmy's eyes flicked to her, venomous. Loose end, her fault for digging. Sirens screamed close, tires crunching gravel. Ryan shoved Jimmy down, turning to Emily, her face pale, eyes blazing with rage and relief. It's done, he said, stepping toward her, voice rough with the weight of it. She shook her head, pulling the lighter from her pocket, tossing it onto the bed beside Margaret. A sharp clink, a final cut. Now it is, she said, resolute, her breath steadying. Cops stormed in, shouts ricocheting as they cuffed Jimmy, dragging him out, his groans fading. Ryan watched, the note fluttering down, Margaret's lie unraveling. Emily moved to the window, staring at the sea, her silhouette a quiet strength. He joined her, the coin in his hand, her survival a balm to wounds he'd carried too long. You didn't do it, he murmured, a truth he'd held tight. She nodded, a faint, hard smile breaking through. But I let him cage me until you. The pier stretched stark under a clear noon sky days later, waves lapping calm below. Ryan found her there, leaning on the railing, hair loose in the breeze. He stopped beside her, the lighter gone, the coin locked away. She turned, eyes clear, free. Staying, she said, simple, final. He nodded, her choice a quiet anchor, the past receding like the tide. The town hummed soft behind them. The sea stretched wide. And in that stillness, they stood, scarred, whole. A story carved from blood and grit, fading into the horizon's open promise.